Hi, everyone. We are going to talk today about innovating with AWS and generative AI. My name is Valerie Canafo, and I lead sales for the AWS's Commercial West region. I'm very excited to have Chris Dayton here. He is the Chief Technology Officer at Criteria Corp. Criteria is a talent company, and they help companies make hiring decisions that are efficient and objective. And so he's going to walk us through his Gen AI development journey and some of the lessons he learned, and how effectively what he's doing is not only changing his company, but changing the industry. So, Chris, I'm hoping that you can tell us a little bit more about Criteria, what you do, your business.
Thanks for having us. It's great to see you all today. Hope you're having a great reInvent. So my name is Chris. I'm the CTO here at Criteria, and we're all about helping you all make the best talent decisions you can with your organization. So we use data and science through psychology to deliver assessments to millions of candidates around the world. We have more than 4,000 global customers, and our goal is to help you make the best hiring decision and also develop them after you've made that talent decision.
So 60 million assessments, you have a little bit of data.
That's right.
You and Criteria were a very early adopter of AI/ML, and I trust that you agree that data strategy, data integrity, data organization is foundational to successful generative AI implementation. Can you tell us a little bit about how you prepared your data journey and what your strategy is?
Yeah, we were fortunate enough in Q4 of 2022 to do a pretty serious overhaul of our data infrastructure, and some of the tools we've used there is an S3 data lake. We use ETL glue jobs to move data around in our infrastructure. We were an early adopter for Redshift serverless, which we're really proud of. It's been a fantastic product for us the last couple of years. And we would visualize on QuickSight. So look, everyone will get value from generative AI right now. The ones who have their data house in order will have transformational outcomes with Gen AI. So you're always going to make efficiency gains, but if you want a transformational outcome for your business, your data house does have to be in order.
Okay, great. So you're in the business of helping companies hire. Tell us about some of the challenges in the hiring process that you have to mitigate and that you have to work into the product as you're developing it for customers.
So there are some obvious limitations of our hiring process today. Hiring is generally a complex, multi-stage process. There's multiple stakeholders involved. How many of you here are in charge of hiring at your organization for development roles, engineers, et cetera? Awesome. So it can be painful at times. I understand that. So it can be complex, multiple stages. The second challenge is evaluation inconsistency. So how do you know that at each stage of the process, you are evaluating candidates according to the same structure? And that is a science called structured interviewing, and we take that really seriously at Criteria. We have a set of products that help you be compelling structured interviewers in your organization to get the best talent signals and therefore choose the best candidates from your pool. And then lastly, often overlooked is the stakeholder experience. Candidates spend a lot of time applying for roles. They may apply for hundreds of roles, and sometimes they don't hear back at all from some of the postings that they've responded to. So an opportunity for you to stand out with your employer brand is to be responsive and for you to have a great candidate experience. So that's definitely a challenge in the hiring process that we pay attention to at Criteria.
So as you think about your portfolio offering, where does Gen AI fit in?
So really the last 24 months, Criteria has been an AI-first solutions organization. Our product team and technology teams are fantastic, and we've really been checking our list of roadmap for the last 3 to 5 years, and we've just we've now been able to unlock so much product functionality with Gen AI. And here on the screen, you see kind of a traditional talent sourcing funnel. And at the very top, you've got the candidate sourcing, where thousands and thousands of candidates come into the funnel. You have many organizations use assessment testing to help give you an early talent signal. And then you'd move to something like video interviewing, like a one-way 3 to 4 question video interview with the candidate. And then you'd move to a live interview, which might be a 40 or 45 minute interview live with the candidate or over Teams or Zoom. And we feel that generative AI has the most applicability in these 2 stages of the funnel because it's such a large amount of text. And generative AI, of course, is great at understanding responses to questions. With the right training and with the right prompting, we can evaluate those responses against competency frameworks and psychometric baselines. And it helps us really bring science into the hiring process in these 2 stages.
So you identify where you're going to implement Gen AI. Where do you start? Do you have experts? Do you have a team? Like, how are you going to go design and implement this?
That's a great question. In Q4 of 2022, we were at the edge of adopting Gen AI in our industry, and HR tech is also a relatively regulated space, right? We don't want AI to make talent decisions. We definitely have lots of validation studies and science that back that our selection process is fair, and we ultimately don't make talent decisions for our customers. We empower hiring managers to use data to pick those best candidates. So while evaluating all of that, most instinct may be to create an AI ops team or centralize your development team in your organization. And after about 2 or 3 months of thinking through that, we instead decided to have a decentralized strategy where we're taking essentially our senior software engineers that have great background in APIs and data and motivation, and those really are kind of a decentralized set of generative AI engineers for us at Criteria. So my recommendation, where appropriate, is try not to create a centralized AI ops team at your organization, because AI touches all of our products in our portfolio, and if we were to do that, we would create an inorganic bottleneck for generative AI at our organization. So we followed a very decentralized approach.
That's really, really interesting. So how did you then prepare your engineers? How did you train them? What tools did you use to get them ready?
Yeah, great question. So we've leveraged, through our private equity program, we've leveraged live training with AWS. So that's a big opportunity for us to educate our staff. We also have AWS Skill Builder, and one of the reasons for choosing Skill Builder was all of the Gen AI content that was put onto that platform. Very helpful. We have some internal hackathons, which we love. We have some internal competitions. So really, it's just about everybody being open-minded and willing, and having them all dive in. And we make some errors here and there, but we have a really good framework to guide us and upskill everybody. So that's been a successful approach for us.
Love it. So tell us about what you actually did. Tell us about your Gen AI products, where you innovated and what you did, what the outcomes were.
So at Criteria, we have 3 main facets of our talent success platform. The first facet is an assessments product. So we can, in anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes, give you a talent signal of cognitive ability. We can give you personality fit to a job role. We can give you language proficiency with one of our AI-powered assessments that runs on SageMaker. And then we have our video interviewing product, which is what we're talking about mostly today. And then after you hire the team, we have our post-hire development product, which is an AI-first application that can have chats with your employees and coach them and develop them after you spend so much time investing in them during the hiring process. So for interview intelligence, it's for that center part of our product with structured interviewing, where we have things like interview transcription, we have automatic question generation, We're capable of giving candidates automated feedback so that we can enhance that stakeholder experience. We can summarize content, and we can even automatically give a talent signal for video interviews. And why that's really important is if you have 300 or 400 people in your candidate pipeline, and maybe 200 of them have answered a one-way interview that is 2 or 3 minutes in response length, today you'd watch those videos. And if that's 9 minutes per candidate, and you've got 200 or 300 candidates, you're investing a lot of time sifting through those video interviews. And where interview intelligence comes in is this portfolio of capabilities that can help us drive those outcomes faster and give you a talent signal that's compounding as you get to know the candidate more and make ultimately the best hire for your organization.
It's super interesting. So you saw huge productivity gains. I mean, I love the ability to send that talent signal early and the question prompt. So just give me a general idea of timeline. Like you started on this a while ago. How long is it taking you from project inception to getting this to production?
So we started with Gen AI initiatives at Criteria Q4 of 2022, and we had some of our initial Gen AI functionalities testing, whether it be internal to help our sales team and more. We had those in as little as 3 months, which was really exciting because it just shows you the power of how you can kind of go from concept to prototype in such a small amount of time. So that should be encouraging to all of you who are looking to bring Gen AI solutions to market for your products.
So you're here. You obviously chose AWS, but what were the considerations going in? How did you arrive at working with us for your Gen AI implementation?
Yeah, and the honest answer is we started with a competitive product Q4 of 2022, and of course, Criteria as a platform is 100% AWS hosted. We value our relationship with AWS significantly, and we're processing millions of assessments every year around the world, and the impact we're making is substantial. So when we evaluate technology partners, it's a really serious set of consideration. And when we were in Q4 of 2022, the space was changing so rapidly. We were looking to prototype quickly. We were looking to get in, add value, have early success. And what led us ultimately to Bedrock was all of our customers hold us to a very high security standard. All of our customers' data is within AWS. We're, of course, skilled and supported at AWS. And for us, it came down to the enterprise-grade data controls and permissions and the flexibility we have with our data and the right that we have to keep all calls to the generative AI models in Bedrock within the context of our own accounts. Our customers love that, we love that, and it was a really important decision for us. And now we're in production with Bedrock, and we're really excited to say that.
We have obviously had many conversations. We haven't talked so much here about LLM flexibility and that, but that has been a consideration for you too.
Sure.
And the thing that amazes me too is fundamentally you're keeping your product updated as technology changes, right? So your investment is an ongoing thing, continuing to understand what's happening in the market and leveraging that technology. You talked about training your staff, but you also had support from a partner.
Right.
How did that figure into your success?
Yeah, with our AI core at Criteria, we had tremendous support from a partner named Calent, and they helped us build out that AI core. They were an extension of our development team, and we were really grateful to have access to AWS resources that empowered us to work with a partner like Calent. And they brought really cutting edge expertise. They helped us understand the importance of model diversity, which I'm a big fan of. Even earlier this week with the announcement of Amazon Nova, we are looking to swap to Amazon Nova imminently within our AI core, and I have a feeling we'll be testing that tomorrow or the day after.
Okay. Talk to me a little bit about risk and compliance.
Especially in HR tech, we can't accidentally make poor talent decisions. We take that really seriously. We do a lot of studies at Criteria. We do a lot of adverse impact analyses, and we have an IO psychology team that analyzes that data professionally and makes sure that we hold ourselves accountable, because I know our customers expect that, and also regulators hold us accountable for that. So we have a set of AI guidelines that we published publicly. There are kind of 10 do's and don'ts of AI for Criteria. For example, we pledge that we will not send personally identifiable information to models. We would not make talent decisions directly from personally identifiable information that would be processed by models. So we have, again, a set of guidelines, and as you look to experiment with Gen AI, no matter where you're adding it, internally, externally, I recommend that you all consider establishing your own set of guidelines that you will hold your team accountable for, so that it can guide all of your initiatives in your organization. And I think we know that that's a really important factor at Criteria.
Yeah. We talked about productivity gains. We talked about advancements in terms of what you can offer customers. From the standpoint of measurable outcomes, what has this done for you, for your business, for your customers?
So for interview intelligence specifically, I think we're really happy to say in our early results that we feel our customers are going to see about a 50% reduction in time to hire by leveraging the functionalities that we've talked about today and this suite of capabilities. And that's a really, really big impact to our customers. So being able to take that time out of the process, make it more efficient, get the best talent in seats as quickly as possible, retain that talent, and then develop that talent, all as a thanks to Gen AI. It's been very exciting. It's going to be a big year for us.
That's huge. That's huge. As you think about everything you've learned here through this process, what are some of the key learnings that maybe you can share?
I think making sure that you've committed to a technology strategy where your model diversity is kind of at the top of your list is something that, again, I would just echo. We had a launch earlier this week by AWS for Amazon Nova, and if you're in a position where your technology is not set up in a way that you could pivot to new models, you're going to miss opportunity. Not only is there cost savings on the opportunity list for us with Nova, but there's functionality gains that we can have, and being able to pivot a percentage of our customer base or all of our customer base or certain functionalities that you see on this list, that's been a really big learning for us, is just staying agile, upskilling the team, not centralizing AI ops, really just empowering everybody in the org, and just being responsive to the changes in industry. Those have all been key learnings for us.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. One final question, Chris. How do you think your work here is fundamentally changing the process of hiring?
Like any good SaaS company, Criteria has a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 7 year roadmap. And I will tell you that some of the capabilities that we dreamed of 3 to 5 years ago just frankly were not possible, because we didn't have a methodology to process text at the scale or with the critical thinking and reasoning that we have now, thanks to Amazon Bedrock. And the reality is we are just unlocking capabilities that are transformational for our customers that, again, we just did not think were possible a few years ago. So it's just unlocked a whole wave of innovation, and 2025 is going to be an incredible year of innovation for our product and engineering teams, and we're just really grateful to be in this wave of technology.
It's really exciting to see. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for listening. If you have any questions, please reach out. Chris has a lot of knowledge and a lot of learnings he could share. So thanks so much. And if you have an opportunity, please complete the survey. If you have questions, we'll be out here